Good afternoon. Welcome to God's Grace on Thee. Today I'd like to basically go over a few items that we learned while we were into the Revelations and discovering what the meanings behind some of the words actually meant. And so again, my curiosity arises and I have to know, and so I even go to various ways in which things can be interpreted or done. And in this respect, I want to speak on the 7 heads. And the 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And they are 7 kings. So this rose my curiosity because I'm thinking mountains. Okay, so mountains is probably not literally, but figuratively, right? Okay, so in the Bible it states the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. Well, what does that pertain to, the 7 mountains? Are they the 7 kings? Or what did that really symbolize? Now, some people seem to think that these mountains are just figuratively speaking, but they actually encompass family and religion and government and business and education and artist entertainment. In the 7 kings, we look in the Old Testament and find that the 7 kings at that time were of Egypt, Israel, Babylon, which is now Iraq area, Persia, which is now currently Iran, Turkey, Greece, Rome, and God. Right? Okay, so I started researching, I started looking into some, and I always like to go and find how other people interpret different things, because that gives me an indication if I'm on the right track or not. And I don't want to bring anything to you that's not from God. So I always pray and ask for God not only to provide me with truth, but to allow His words to come out of my mouth so that I know that I'm only speaking for Him and He's speaking through me. It's important, especially when you're trying to learn. You know, there's so much. There's so many people out there that that read and learn and are scholars. So I always look at everyone's interpretation. They use various words, and some just see things in a different side. For example, the one I just gave you. But others see it in a different fashion. For example, the scholars believe that Pope Benedict XVI was indeed the 7th king that they speak about in Revelation 17. The 7 kings of Revelation can either refer to kingdoms or kings, right? There's no third possibility, they say. Well, the context of Revelation 17 is all about the Church of Rome. So to apply the kings in Revelation 17 to kingdoms would be a flagrant violation of the context. But even if it were to apply kings to kingdoms, there's no combination of kingdoms that's possible that would be in harmony with descriptions given for the kings, especially as it applies to the reign of the king, which was foretold to be a short duration. Now, it's in this particular area that my mind goes another way, okay? Because we're in the Bible right now, so we're pertaining to that biblical time, that era. But in my mind's eye, I'm looking, and I'm looking at the list of presidents we have. We have Carter, we have Bush, we had Clinton, we had Obama, we had Trump, we had now the seventh, and the seventh is Biden. There is no kingdom today that would fit the short duration description that would fall before the commencement of the reign of the eighth, right? So the wilderness context, that means the wilderness experience going back into like biblical times, okay? It demands that we focus attention on that time when the papacy was in its wilderness experience. Well, this took place when the papacy received the deadly wound in 1798, when Napoleon banished and he exiled Pope Pius VI to Valence in France. And prior to 1798, the papacy was supreme to all the emperors, all the kings, and the princesses of Europe. And in 1929, the papacy was content to see that the popes regulated to mere kings over a landmass of only about 100 acres in Rome. So until 1860, the papal states alone that covers about a third of Italy. And the count of the seven kings begins with Pius XI. So the consequential orders of the Pope from Pius the Sixth, Pius the 11th to Benedict the 16th fits that particular prophetic description that we have been talking about in Revelation 17. So there's two ways to look at this. The reign of the king, the sixth king or the sixth pope, and the reign of the seventh king or the seventh pope in the former was confirmed when the angel took John to the reign of the sixth king. And that was John Paul II, the longest reign amongst the seven kings, and the Pope who will be most remembered by the end-time generation. But this order, this consequential order, was also confirmed by the sudden resignation of Benedict the 16th, which shocked the world, right? It's shaken the whole Catholic Church. But if we take a look-see at these popes, and I want you to see this, as you can see here, the 8 kings of Revelation, the last pope, right here, Pope Francis. And they believe that these are the 5 that have fallen. One is, which was John Paul II. Okay, he was seriously wounded in 1981. He was considered the 6th king. We have Benedict the 16th, and he was the 7th king. He ruled for only a short time. Then came Francis the First, and there's speculation on the part of this particular organization, because history is unfolding as we speak, because everything that we're seeing is coming to light. And we've seen that in the Vatican with the Pope. So they're awaiting the emergence of the 8th, the final Antichrist that goeth into perdition. Okay, so that's scary, but this man is already on his last leg. And so that prophecy would come to pass. Now, if the 7th king was indeed Benedict the 16th, then it follows that the pope that comes after him would be the 8th, which is Revelation 17. And they don't have any gaps in between this transition. So it is from the 7th and the 8th. So why did John Paul II not emerge right after the end of Benedict the 16th reign? Because the scholars erred, okay? They erred in identifying the identity of the 8th. So for this and their unintentional blunder, they stated, "We seek with all humility the forgiveness of Yahuwah, our Heavenly Father, and Yahshua, our Savior. We also seek the forgiveness of every student of Bible prophecy who agreed with us that the impersonated John Paul II was to be the 8th king." And they erred in thinking that the 8th king or the 8th pope would be the impersonated John Paul II. And this is why. The bottomless pit is well established in the Bible as the abode of devils, right? So since the 8th king, the 8th pope, was to come from the bottomless pit, we assume wrongly that he would be one of Satan's fallen angels impersonating one of the previous popes. So we arrived by the phrase, "and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7." You find that in verse 11. So one of the 7 kings, John Paul II, stands out as the most important and the most known by the end time generation. So it was only natural to assume that if the 8th king or the 8th pope was the devil, then he would then impersonate John Paul II. Do you follow? Okay, so the context of the bottomless pit can also suggest that the 8th king or the 8th pope will be fully under the control and guidance of Satan and his fallen angels to a degree not seen in the previous 7 popes. And if you really think about it, you really watch and observe what's going on around in our world and what the Pope is now allowing, even though it says that's a no-no, the Pope of today is allowing that to happen. He is disregarding what Jesus has stood for and what God is telling us to do. And that's what I read here. This is what I see that's going and taking place today. So now this now seems the right interpretation for the bottomless pit of Revelation 17. So the divine hint was one is. So we also can read into it that that's what was intended, right? So when John was given the vision, he was taken to the time of John Paul II. Okay, so it wasn't natural to take John to the reign of the most important of the 7 kings. So taking John to the reign of the 6th merely confirmed that the 7 kings were indeed 7 popes. And the 6th was chosen because his reign was the longest. And the most distinguished of the 7 popes. So he's in high regard. He's remembered. He's loved. He's the Pope of the day. So the beast that was until 1798 and is not at the time of reign of the 6th king, it is still wilderness time for the beast. Even he is the 8th, but during the reign of the 8th, the beast power will be fully restored to the papacy and is of the 7th. So the 8th, though a beast power, now is yet a king, just like the previous 7 fallen kings. And then they go into perdition. The 8th will not prevail and will be destroyed and punished violently by the 10 kings when they realize belatedly the evil nature of the beast. And we find that in verse 11. So which parts of these would best serve to Satan's deceptive plan for the final crisis? All right? by introducing the eighth king or pope as John Paul II, as we formerly believed? Or will he be Francis I? So we're convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that introducing the eighth as Francis I serves Satan, the master, the deceiver, much better for the following reasons. While prophecy students were eagerly waiting for the emergence of John Paul II, Satan has stealthily introduced the eighth king and pope with no fanfare and amidst worldwide acceptance. And many of us who were pinning our hopes on the impersonation of John Paul II were disappointed, right? That our expectations were not met, and some sadly are likely to give up on Bible prophecies. But they make a statement here and they say, we appeal to those who are tempted to despair and give up their faith in Bible prophecies to not give Satan the chance to claim a victory. And by not sending one of his fallen angels to impersonate John Paul II at this time, Satan succeeded in avoiding a needless battle with those Christians who would have denounced this emergence. So Satan foresaw the economic depression that would engulf the entire world in the final battle, just prior to the return of Yeshua. That's triggered by the destructive forces that he's going to unleash in our world. We see all that's taking place on the eastern side of the world, right? And we're watching food being destroyed, fields being destroyed. We're seeing food being, food production companies have literally been apparently, engulfed in fire. And it just seemed like there was one after the other after the other. So this, in that same economic depression, is what we're kind of seeing now. We'll feel it as the year ends. We're going to continue to feel this, okay? And it says here, the Satan foresaw the economic depression that would engulf the world in the final battle. And he will unleash in our world. He planned that the eighth king or pope would be someone who is already established as an inviolable, credible, and with the poor in his mother country. So we're looking at that right now with our current pope. It says he will galvanize the poor to bring pressure to bear on the politicians of the world to adopt the kind of laws and enactments that would severely cut religious freedoms that are enjoyed in many countries today. We see that happening now with transgenderism. Not only was it allowed by our current administration to hang so proudly in between our two flags, it was a disgust to our Almighty Father for what they did, because it was blasphemous. Because in our Bible today, it reads that way, and it tells us we were born man and woman, and woman was made from man's rib. So that's all there is. There is no he, she, or he, or these people that want to continue to literally change who they are, and that is a soreness in God's eyes, okay? So that's what's happening today. So as the number of the poor are going to steadily increase around the world, and we're seeing that now because the prices of rent are going up, people are being pushed out, they're now living on the streets. It is happening in some of the most major, largest cities in America. And it says that the poor will become a powerful, destructive, and threatening tool in the hand of the eighth king or the pope against world leaders. So they're going to get angry and they're going to turn, okay? And when they find people that are weak and they're not even considering God. Okay, they're just too surrounded in everyday life's woes. Okay, and they've been made all these promises by the current administration, and I'm talking about all those millions. We're looking at about 33, maybe 38 million that have already come across, and we have to feed them. We have to make sure that they have a place to lay their heads, okay? But it's been a tremendous burden from the way that it was being handled, okay? So, based on that, they've come in knowing that they've been made promises. And when they get here, they're finding that the promises aren't what they really thought they were going to be. And these people are going to start turning. And the reason why I say that, because most of the people that are coming in are young men.